My Hero Academia, All Grown Up. Chapter 37. Uraraka woke up with a start at the sound of glass shattering. She shot up on the sofa and looked around at her surroundings wildly. For a moment, she was confused, but once her eyes fell onto two familiar faces, she breathed a sigh of relief. "Sorry," Cho murmured softly while Mirio glanced away from the girl with a grimace. It's fine," the blonde man airily replied, but even in her slight drowsiness, Uraraka could hear the slight edge to his tone. "Accidents happen. Just be careful walking out of the kitchen so you don't cut your feet while I go find the broom." Uraraka relaxed at the sight of them in his little kitchen and slumped back down on the couch. "How long was I out?" "It's still early," Mirio replied as he walked past her and opened up his utility closet to retrieve a broom and dustpan. "I didn't want to wake you up so soon." Uraraka mindlessly began to feel around for her phone, but when she didn't find it, an urgency crawled up her throat. Oh no! Her eyes began scanning the area for Mirio's cell phone, but when she couldn't see it, she grew progressively more frantic. "Relax." Mirio's soothing tone washed over her as he suddenly appeared in front of her. "It's on the charger in my room. I checked when I woke up, but there's no missed calls." He never called. Fear worked itself up her spine, and Uraraka only felt herself fall further into a pit of worry. She had stayed up as long as she could waiting for the call, but she must have drifted off at some point. She stood up abruptly and looked hard at the blonde man. "I need to try calling them again." Mirio cleared his throat and reached down to the coffee table to grab up his television remote. "I get it, but I think your coworkers have bigger problems on their hands right now." "Look." He switched on the news, and Uraraka stared wide-eyed at the images on the screen. Tokyo was smoking in several places, and short clips of people running through the streets played over the commentators. Mirio glanced sideways at the brunette beside him as she observed the mayhem. It's been going on all night. The heroes in Tokyo have had the hands full with villains on every corner. It's not looking good for anyone. Oh my. Uraraka couldn't even begin to finish the sentence as she stared in shock. "Why?" Mirio shrugged. "I'm guessing it's because of whatever you guys did last night. Everyone villain in the city helped themselves to quirking drugs and raided the agencies. But it's not just Tokyo. It's all across Japan." As if on cue, the newscasters switched their coverage to other areas of the country, showing images out of Kyoto, Osaka, and Yokohama where the same sort of problems were taking place. Uraraka was silent as she watched montages of agencies across the country that were left in tatters as heroes attempted to get their cities under control while protecting the citizenry. Among them was a wall that had been spray-painted with a single phrase in white. "Release them." Uraraka swallowed uncomfortably before she glanced at Mirio. "I'd like to try calling them again, please." Mirio nodded at her before he disappeared down the hallway, and Uraraka turned her attention back to the screen. The newscaster was speaking quickly, attempting to cover as many stories as possible, and Uraraka listened to what she had missed. While agencies across Japan grapple with villains from all sectors, the police have just confirmed that a Mamushi Group villain known as Teller was taken into custody following a long operation that went late into the night. Police Chief Kenji Tsuragami released a statement confirming the arrest, and he went on to say that heroes across the country should be made aware of widespread venom use. Venom is a powerful quirking drug that is illegally trafficked and sold by the Mamushi Group. It has long-lasting effects, as well as a tendency to make users irrational and violent. Chief Tsuragami also emphasized in his statement that he believes the attacks on our local agencies are directly linked to the capture of Teller and possible known associates that have been left unnamed. Heroes across Japan have worked through the night to quell the skirmishes, but it is not clear that villains have any intention of letting up. "Give our people back" is the message they are sending, and everyone is wondering how heroes will handle this situation from here. Here. Mirio stepped from the hallway and held out his phone. "The Edgeshot Agency has been at the center of the attacks, though. I'm not sure you'll get through to anyone." Uraraka took the phone and immediately dialed the same number as the night before. She was more worried than ever for her friends, co-workers, and the people of Tokyo. Although, she would be lying to herself if bakugou wasn't first on that list, but she would keep that thought private. As she pressed the phone to her ear, she noticed that Cho had wandered into the living room as well and was watching the screen. "This is my fault," the girl mumbled begrudgingly. I should have just gone home yesterday. Uraraka blinked as the phone beeped in her ear, indicating that the connection could not be made. She dropped the phone down on the sofa beside her before standing up. That's not true, Cho. None of this is your fault. Villains are going to do bad things no matter what, and it doesn't matter how or why. You just need to focus on keeping yourself safe here. Don't worry about what's going on out there. But if I go back, then maybe Dash. No. Mirio suddenly cut in with a sharp shake of his head. Absolutely not. You're staying put until we can find a safe place to hide you. With any luck, the attacks will die down, and we can place you with a good agency for protection. Uraraka was relieved that Mirio finally spoke up. Her mind was too jumbled at the moment to argue with a girl teetering on villainy. She met the blonde man's gaze and nodded in acknowledgement at him. Thank you. Mirio sighed and reached up to rub his temples and forehead. I understand why you brought her here, Uraraka, but you can't keep her here for long. You know that, right? I understand. Uraraka breathed out a stressed sigh. Do you think UA would be a good option for her? Mirio looked miffed at her question. You can't be serious right now. I mean Dash, Uraraka began with a shrug, but Mirio held up a hand to silence her. Now isn't the time to talk about that sort of thing. We have bigger fish to fry. He turned his gaze to the television. I'll stay here with her, but you need to go to your job. Right. Uraraka shook herself out and reached for her costume. She held it up and frowned at how beat up it was, but she couldn't afford to be disappointed with it. She needed to get back to Tokyo and help her agency. I'll go change. I'll make you something to eat for the train. Mirio carried the broom to his kitchen and began to sweep up the broken glass on the floor. Uraraka gave Mirio a parting look before she snuck down the hallway and ducked into the bathroom. She stared at herself in the mirror for a while and held back frustrated tears. She was worried about Bakugou. Earthworm had told her last night that he was in the hospital, but other than that, she didn't know anything. He hadn't called her, and she had no way of reaching him directly. All she could do was worry and hope that once she arrived in Tokyo, someone would have some news to share with her. She set to work putting on her costume and folding the loose clothes that Mirio had lent her to sleep in. She squeezed herself into the rumpled costume, carefully pulling the reluctant and damaged zipper up her back. She frowned back at her reflection as she attached her utility belt and pulled on the puffy pink cuffs. Once she was finished, a wave of exhaustion rolled over her, and she sniffed hard, fighting back the worry in her chest. She vaguely wondered when she'd be able to see Bakugou, but she forced that thought away as well. Being a hero came first today. Her comrades had already been putting in all the work, so she had to relieve them before she could afford the time to worry about him. A quick tap on the door jolted her from her thoughts. She wiped her face of its worry lines before she opened the door to Mirio. Sorry, I didn't mean to take so long. It's fine. He gave her a small smile before he held out a coat to her. I thought you might want this for the journey. It's chilly today, and it'll help keep your identity hidden until you're out of Mizutofu. Uraraka looked down at the coat and gave him a grateful smile. Thank you. She took it off his hands and went to work pulling it over her shoulders. It was a long, black coat, loose-fitting over her shoulder, and its sleeves dipped down over her hands. She pulled it closed in front of her and carefully did the 3 buttons to keep it shut. If it's too big, I can see if Eri has one that fits better. Mirio observed her with a slight chuckle. Uraraka shook her head. No, this should do fine. Thank you for this. I'll return it as soon as I can. How is Eri? She's good. Mirio's face softened at the mention of the girl, just working hard and getting ready for midterms. I'm glad. Uraraka cocked her head at Mirio as he glanced down the hallway to the kitchen. Listen, I'm really sorry that I put this on you. It's not really fair to you, is it? It's fine. I understand better now. Mirio looked back at her. Did you anticipate villains attacking agencies? Uraraka shrugged and laughed bitterly. No, not really, but Cho is in a really hard situation, and I just didn't have the heart to leave her with someone that might not give her the consideration and protection she deserves. She's a troubled kid, and if she's going to be a hero, she needs someone that can look past her mistakes. You were the only one I could really trust with that. Mirio hummed in recognition and leaned his shoulder on the doorframe. I'll take care of her for now, but this cannot be long-term. Uraraka. I don't know anything about her. All I know is that she's a villain's kid and she's had her own run-ins with the law. Have you thought at all about her just pulling your leg to gather information on you? Of course. Uraraka shook her head at him. That's the other reason I brought her to you. You're good with kids, and I figured that you might be able to see that a little better than I can. Mirio heaved a breath and took his weight off the doorframe to stand upright. I'll help you out for as long as I can, but keep in mind that you're going to need to find another place to put her, and soon. I won't have her around Eri. Uraraka swallowed and nodded. I understand. This is only temporary, I promise. Thank you, Mirio. He nodded back at her and took a step back. And I think you owe me a few other answers, but now isn't the time for that. You need to get going. Right. Uraraka felt an unease crawl up her spine. I'll make this up to you, I promise. Mirio didn't reply before he turned back toward the main room of the apartment, and Uraraka followed him silently. They came upon Cho sitting quietly at the counter and staring down into her breakfast. Cho. Uraraka smiled gently and went to meet the girl. I have to go, but you're going to stay with Mirio for a while, okay? I'll be back in a day or two, and we'll figure things out from there. Cho looked up from her bowl and gave the brunette a blank look. What's going to happen to me? Uraraka felt her smile slip for a brief moment. You told me that you wanted to be a hero, right? The girl skewed her mouth. I guess, yeah. That's a really awesome thing. Uraraka rested her elbow on the counter to give the girl her full attention. Mirio can help you figure out what you want to do after this is over, so trust him, okay? In the meantime, I just need you to tell me anything you can think of that I can use. Once we can catch Viper, you'll be in the clear. Cho licked her lips and gave Uraraka a stoic stare. I already told you. I don't know anything. Uraraka could hear Mirio shift on his feet behind her. That's all right. You don't have to think about it right now, but if anything comes to mind, tell Mirio, okay? Even if it's something small or if it seems like it won't matter. Anything can help us. I said that I don't know anything. Cho scowled back. And I'm not a rat anyway. My dad dash. Your dad is locked up now. Mirio cut in and slowly circled into the kitchen. You don't have to worry about getting in trouble with him anymore. Uraraka turned her attention to the blonde man and was surprised by his response. I think what Mirio is trying to say is dash. I'm saying that you can't have your cake and eat it too. Mirio gave the girl a serious look. You need to make up your mind. He turned to Uraraka. Here, he held out a bento box to her. I made you something to eat for the road. I can handle this from here. Uraraka slowly reached out and took the box before glancing back at the girl. Thank you. And Cho, please be nice to Mirio. He's just trying to help, okay? Let him help you. He's good at it. I'll see you out. Mirio turned toward the front door and began walking away without another word. Uraraka looked down at the girl one last time and tried to look serious instead of desperate. Be nice to Mirio, please. He can help you get into UA if you're serious about it, and I hope you are. He'll do everything he can to help you, but you have to let him. Yeah, whatever. Cho slid the bowl away and gave Uraraka a pout. I'm not a little kid, you know. Uraraka patted the girl on the shoulder. Oh, I know. I'll be back soon to check on you. Just stay here. She didn't spend another moment with the girl and hurried toward the door. She found Mirio standing with it propped open and she gave him a grateful smile. Thank you again, Mirio. 2 days. Mirio held up as many fingers. I'll keep her for 2 days, but once the weekend is over, you need to come up with a better plan. Deal? Deal. Uraraka took a mental note and filed it away in her mind for her to figure out with later. I owe you. Mirio ignored her comment and watched her exit the apartment. I'll see what I can get out of her that you can use. But, Uraraka, his tone had a certain warning to it. Be careful out there. It's a mess. When is it not? Uraraka flashed him an uneasy smile before she started down the hallway. I'll call you as soon as I can. Yeah. Mirio gave her a genuine smile for the first time since arriving. Leave this to me, Uravati. You just get out there and kick some butt. Goodness knows that you deserve that. Uraraka couldn't stop the giggle that sprouted from her lips. Thanks, Mirio. Uraraka had made her way to the train station, only to find herself stuck. Cancelled. The brunette stared incredulously at the clerk that was locking the door to the station. What do you mean it's cancelled? No trains out or in today. The clerk shrugged and popped the bubblegum in her mouth. Uraraka felt a pit in her stomach open up. No. I need to get to Tokyo today. Sorry. The clerk didn't pay Uraraka any more mind as she turned and began walking toward the parking lot. Can't you guys make an exception for heroes? Uraraka chased after her, a pleading note in her tone. Listen, lady, the clerk turned around and pouted. I don't make the rules, I just do what my boss says. When they tell me to lock up, I lock up. Besides, all the conductors are already gone, and I'm not going to take you myself. Tokyo Station is messed up anyway, so if you need to get there so bad, take a cab. Uraraka watched her walk away as defeat settled into her gut. Shoot. She grumbled for a moment before calling after the clerk. You were no help at all. After a long moment of dismay, she turned around and looked back at the city of Mizutofu. It had also fallen under the grip of the villains, but not nearly on the scale of Tokyo, Kyoto, and others. Taking a cab all the way to Tokyo would take the entire day, given that she could find someone willing to take her at all. She was stuck here. Not good. Uraraka mumbled to herself and began walking away from the station, subconsciously heading a natural direction that she knew by heart. Not knowing anything and being stuck in Mizutofu was pretty much her worst nightmare right now, but nevertheless, she was in a tough situation, and she needed to find a way out. The streets were essentially deserted, aside from the occasional person that looked up to no good. They didn't bother her, and Uraraka was silently grateful for the coat Mirio had lent her. It concealed her identity, and that was probably for the best. She couldn't risk being found out in Mizutofu. If the villains caught wind, they would all head to this sleepy city and turn it upside down to find Teller and Cho. Truthfully, Uraraka was confused by the extreme reaction from the villains. Had Teller really been that important of an asset to the Mamushi group? If that was the case, then why on earth would Viper allow him to raid a police station in the first place? None of it made sense. The Mamushi group was either a more impulsive organization than ever before, or the entire thing was fracturing without Teller, Constrictor, and Cameo to keep things in order on Viper's behalf. Uraraka thought back to the Kihin fight, and she remembered Viper. He seemed like a poised leader that was heartless enough to blatantly disregard his own subordinates. He had built the Mamushi group from the ground up, reminding Uraraka of Overhaul's endeavors years ago. What was once a small Japanese mob enterprise that operated underground, the Mamushi group found their stride in the last 2 decades, growing exponentially into the powerhouse it was today. They had managed to fly under the radar throughout the League of Villains' tyranny, but once the large organization had been crushed, Viper found his road to power. The group had spread their influence across Japan in the matter of months, strong-arming villains everywhere to their cause and manufacturing corking drugs en masse. They made millions in their first year as the top dogs, and the fallout had been catastrophic to the nation as a whole. People everywhere had gotten hooked on quirking drugs and turned to villainy to get their fix, striving to get more out of their quirks at tremendous cost. Viper had become a household name soon after. Agencies across the country searched for him, busting lowbrow dealers and hoping they could work their way to the top. However, that goal was never reached, and the Mamushi group shrouded themselves in secrets and countless layers of protection. The name Viper slowly dropped off from the news, and media attention eventually reverted back to politics and normal life. It was like everyone simply accepted that the villain's influence was cemented in Japan from then on, unable to shake the looming darkness that the Mamushi group held over them all. Not even Deku could get a solid lead on him, and he had endlessly surprised Uraraka during that time. Uraraka blinked, breaking herself away from her thoughts, and she found herself in a familiar part of town. She glanced down the street and saw 2 people duck into their apartment building, casting her concerned looks before they disappeared. She shook her head as realization dawned on her, and she looked up. When did she get here? The apartment building was small and run down, but an air of familiarity washed over her. Her eyes meandered over the railing of the balcony that used to be her quiet spot. The little string of lights that she'd wrapped around it were gone now, and her wicker chair was nowhere to be seen. Instead, the balcony was barren except for a few children's toys and a potted plant. It stirred a strange feeling in her gut, and she sighed. Her life with Deku felt like a story she'd read instead of something she'd lived. It seemed to cement in her that the entire relationship was just a memory now and not her life. It felt odd to see that their home belonged to someone else now. Uravity. Uraraka turned her head and found a familiar face. Knuckles? The woman standing a little way down the sidewalk looked both confused and excited. Hey, what are you doing here? She ran up to the brunette and pulled her into a hug. Uraraka hugged her back and laughed nervously. I was, out here on a business trip, but the trains are closed down. I can't get back to Tokyo. Oh, that's no good at all. Knuckles pulled back and gave Uraraka a quick look up and down. Wow, you look great. Uraraka flushed at the compliment. Thank you, so do you? Come on. Knuckles grabbed her hand and ignored Uraraka's reply. We should get out of here before we're spotted. You don't really want to be out here by yourself right now. The woman hero turned away and began to pull them down the street at a brisk pace. Besides, Bombshell would just love to see you. Uraraka couldn't help the warm smile on her lips at the mention of the blonde heroine. That sounds great. Do you guys have any way of helping me get back to Tokyo? Knuckles glanced over her shoulder as they came to an intersection. You can ask, but the agency is pretty tied up at the moment. Maybe I can help, Uraraka offered with a hopeful look. Knuckles shrugged. Honestly, we could use it. She glanced around and waved at another woman down the street. Come on, meet my new partner. Uraraka graciously let herself be led by the young heroine, Knuckles. She joined the agency 2 years after Uraraka did, and they'd worked with each other often during that year. Knuckles got her hero name for obvious reasons, as she was able to make her fists into nearly unstoppable objects. Her signature move was Knuckle Sandwich, and Uraraka had seen the girl grow into a capable heroine with a lot more to offer. Truthfully, she was reminded of herself in the girl. Like Uraraka, Knuckles was destined for more than just a small agency in Mizutofu. They made introductions before the trio retreated in the direction of the agency. Uraraka felt a nostalgic feeling as they moved down her old patrol routes, and her eyes glazed over graffiti and broken windows on stores. Man, this doesn't look good. We got this sector mostly under control this morning. Knuckles cut in as the agency came into view. We're all going to be on overtime for a while though, I'm sure. Thankfully, we don't have it as bad as others. The Katana agency across town was pretty much destroyed. A lot of the members have come here to regroup, but it's a total mess over there. Yeah. Uraraka's eyes fell on a familiar phrase spray painted on a brick wall. Release them. Knuckles stopped to stare as well. Don't ask me. I have no idea who they're talking about. I do. Uraraka mumbled and turned toward the agency. Come on, let's hurry. Knuckles gave her an odd look before following behind. She shared a curious glance with her partner as the brunette trudged forward at a renewed speed and Knuckles hurried to catch up. So you were here on a business trip? Yup. Uraraka popped the P as she hurried up to the front door of the agency. She pulled on the handle, but it didn't budge. She glanced back at the two heroes in confusion before Knuckles pulled out an identification card and pressed it against the sensor on the door. Bombshell got a new security system a few months back. Knuckles pulled open the door for all of them and shrugged at the brunette. We all thought it was silly at the time, but now. Uraraka hummed and strutted into the building. The gray marble floors were smudged in a few places with mud and what looked to be some blood. A few heroes were slouched against the wall with water bottles in their hands and tired faces. Her heart sank at the sight of it, but she tried not to dwell on it. She didn't recognize many of them and assumed they were Katana agency workers. The brunette pushed past the scene and made for the fabulous staircase that led up to Bombshell's office. The agency is quite small, but it clearly was standing the test of fortitude. I'm going up. I'll come with you. Knuckles left her patrol partner and jogged behind, taking the stairs 2 at a time until she was caught up with Uraraka. I'm not sure if she's here, but dash. Oh my gosh. Both women jerked their heads as a high-pitched squeal broke their conversation. Bombshell was standing a few yards away, holding her hands out in surprise. Is that who I think it is? Uraraka's face fought between relief and joy. Bombshell. Come here. The blonde woman skipped over the floor excitedly before enveloping Uraraka in a tight embrace. It's so like you to show up at the bleakest moment to share your sunshine with us, Uravity. Uraraka relaxed into the heroine's hold. I don't know how much sunshine I have to offer right now, Bombshell. SH. The blonde hushed her before pulling back and smoothing a hand over Uraraka's hair. The world would have to end before my little Uravity stopped smiling. With that, Uraraka beamed. I'm so happy to see that you're all right. Oh, please. Bombshell took a step back and flipped her long hair over her shoulder. You may be a big-shot Tokyo hero now, but that doesn't mean I couldn't kick your ass 10 times over. The familiarity of the situation put Uraraka at ease, and she felt the tension in her shoulders release. I'll make sure to remember that. Yeah, you can take that to the bank, sweetheart. Bombshell winked teasingly. So, what do I owe this pleasure? And please, don't tell me Ed Shot has so much extra manpower that he'd send you all the way out here to help us. No. Uraraka pursed her lips with a shadow of a laugh. I was already out here when it started. Can we talk in private? The blonde heroine raised her eyebrows before glancing back at Knuckles. Sure. Come on, let's go to my office. Uraraka cast the younger heroine an apologetic look before following Bombshell down the wide hallway. Sorry, I'll explain later, okay? Knuckles frowned in confusion before dejectedly turning to descend the stairs again. Okay. Uraraka pushed the guilt out of her mind before following Bombshell inside and letting the older heroine shut the door. Sorry to just barge in like this. She was getting tired of apologizing to everyone. It's fine. Bombshell waved her hand dismissively. You should know by now that you're welcome to barge in whenever you please. So, she turned around to look at the brunette and planted her hands on her hips. What's this about? Uraraka let Bombshell lead her across the room to sit on 2 white sofa chairs in the corner. I really need to get back to Tokyo right away. All right. Bombshell sunk into her plush chair. But I need you to elaborate for me a bit. Uraraka, my dear. The brunette sighed in exhaustion. I really need to go help my friends there. They have their hands full right now, and I'm stuck here. They need my help. Listen. Bombshell sunk her shoulders against the back of a chair. Just because one hero is missing from the line of duty doesn't mean that the entire city will fall. They have it under control, I'm sure. It's more than that. Uraraka spat out suddenly. She gave up trying to put it into words and let the worry for bakugou creep back into her system. Can you help me? The blonde heroine's eyebrows furrowed with curiosity. Well, we don't have a lot of resources at the moment, but this sounds urgent. It is. Uraraka breathed pleadingly. I need to get out of Mizutofu before the Mamushi group learns that I'm here. Why? Bombshell's tone was punctuated with an inarguable tone. The brunette bit her lip and twisted her hands in her lap. I hid an asset out here, and I don't want Viper finding them. Bombshell leaned forward in her seat, a playful interest in her eye. Ooh, you managed to snag yourself a CI? Damn girl. Look at you. Uraraka flushed nervously. Not exactly. It's more of a witness protection situation. But please, Bombshell, you can't say anything to anyone about it. Of course not, Bombshell laughed easily. Who do you think I am? I'm the ultimate secret keeper. She wasn't wrong, and Uraraka knew it. The blonde hero was quite a force to be reckoned with, even in a small city like Mizutofu. Her quirk easily revealed even the deepest desires of someone's heart and uncovered the most hidden nuggets of someone's conscience. She wasn't really a hero that competed in combat, but when across an interrogation table, the heroine was unstoppable. I'm going to help you. Bombshell suddenly rose out of her chair and made for her mirror-plated desk positioned over a fluffy baby blue rug. Just because you're one of my favorites. And don't worry, I'll help take care of your little asset too once we've managed to get the city under control again. Uraraka blinked in surprise. Had she really been that easy to read for Bombshell? You haven't been around in a while, Uravity. Bombshell winked as she snatched her long-distance walkie off the top of her desk. It used to be much more difficult to tell what was going on with you. You got pretty good at it with Deku around, but now, you're wearing your emotions on your sleeve again. Uraraka looked away in embarrassment as Bombshell lifted the radio to her lips. She could overhear the conversation as it took place, and she waited with bated breath as Bombshell went to work on securing her a ride back to Tokyo. This is Bombshell. Bombshell's emphatic tone made it obvious who she was without having to name herself. I need a chopper immediately. The radio was silent for a moment before it crackled. What? Why? The male voice on the other end was barely audible through the static. "Don't ask me why," Bombshell replied haughtily. "I need one freed up right away. Can you make it happen?" There was another silence before a response came through. "All 3 choppers are on tasks right now, Bombshell." The person on the other end sounded annoyed. "Oh, is that right?" Bombshell replied quickly. "What could be so urgent that you couldn't spare one for a few hours?" "A few hours?" The responder was incredulous at her request. "What the hell do you need a helicopter for a few hours for?" Bombshell huffed irritably. "I don't have time to argue with you right now, Dynamo. Can you spare one or not?" "No." The reply came back terse and grumbled through the static. 2 are on the Katana Agency mess, and the 3rd is heading to extract heroes trapped inside the Capitol building. Damn it. Bombshell clenched her jaw before she pressed the talk button again. "Can you take one off of Katana?" "This is urgent, Dynamo." "It's not my call to make," Dynamo responded. "You'll have to get clearance from the mayor for that." "Saw the..." Bombshell slammed the radio down on her desk before she reached for her desk telephone. "Fine then," she hissed and began smashing the buttons on her phone. "I'll just find another helicopter. Lord knows that the mayor wouldn't bother to give me the time of day." She looked up at Uraraka as she pressed the phone to her ear. "That jackass hasn't taken one of my phone calls since the spring fundraiser. Did you know that?" The jerk found himself a nice high horse after that debacle. Uraraka met her gaze in confusion and scrambled to figure it out. She honestly didn't have any idea what Bombshell was referring to, as she had already transferred to Tokyo by then. "Bombshell, if you can't make it happen, then it's really dash." "Yes, hello?" Bombshell held up a finger to silence her, and her attention turned to the phone call. "Yes, this is Bombshell. Is Director Benjiro there?" There was a long pause before the blonde woman spoke up again. "Yeah, well, I don't really care about that right now. I need to speak with him immediately." Uraraka couldn't help the quiet laugh on her lips. Bombshell always managed to get her way through sheer willpower alone. She often rubbed people the wrong way, but it had been proven as an effective tactic. People often bent to her will to avoid the nuisance of a circular conversation with the relentless blonde agency owner. "Yes, I'll hold." Bombshell sniffed with satisfaction and leaned back on her heels. She looked over at Uraraka again. "Just relax, I'm working on it." Uraraka shook her head in humored disbelief as she watched Bombshell argue with the director of the Mizutofu local news station. They went back and forth for a while before Bombshell smiled and nodded victoriously. "That's great to hear, Director Benjiro. I knew you'd see things my way. Can we consider ourselves even now?" Uraraka jerked her head back in surprise and confusion. How much of a stranglehold did Bombshell really have over the city of Mizutofu? The news station owed her a debt that she was collecting on Uraraka's behalf? Perfect, Bombshell purred with false appreciation. "You can just have them land on top of the agency." Uraraka stayed silent as the conversation came to a close and the blonde woman hung up the phone. She released a silent breath that she didn't realize she was holding as the heroine crossed the room again with a smile. What in the world was all that about? "Don't worry about it." Bombshell plopped back down in the chair opposite of her. "You have your ride to Tokyo, but we've got about an hour to wait. Until then, I need to hear everything." Uraraka shifted nervously. "What do you mean?" "Well, Deku, of course," Bombshell replied as if it was obvious. "I mean, if I had to say, I saw that coming years ago, but I want to hear it from you. What happened?" "Bombshell." Uraraka laughed awkwardly. "It's not really that big of a deal." "Deku." Bombshell reached out to the small coffee table between them and grabbed up a magazine, flipping it open to a bookmarked page. "One of the most successful and productive heroes of our time. He's in the top 20 as a 22-year-old, and well on his way to #1 within the next 5 years. He's smart, good-looking, and well-loved by the media class. I mean," she flipped the magazine around to show a full spread of Deku and his achievements. "He's the whole damn package from the way I see it. But even then, the most ideal of men," she flipped the page, "can have their heart broken." Uraraka hit Splitsville. Uraraka saw the photo of them together with a zigzagged line through them and slumped her shoulders. "Yeah, I guess." "When?" Bombshell turned the magazine back around and looked at the photo herself. "I didn't think you were ever going to work up the courage to leave him, girl. I thought you guys were stuck with each other forever." Gosh, I've never been so relieved to read a tabloid. Uraraka leaned her head over the back of the chair to look at the ceiling. A few months ago, after the Viper fight in Kihan. Good job on that, by the way. I was really impressed with you. Bombshell nodded her head and looked up from the magazine, closing it in her lap. I was so happy to see that you made it out of that. Well, Uraraka shrugged and turned her head forward again. Ground Zero is the one to thank in that scenario. He saved my life. Uh-huh. Bombshell grinned knowingly as she caught the slight twitch of smile on Uraraka's lips. He sure did, didn't he? A total softa move on his part, but for you, I'm sure he'd do it again in a heartbeat. Wadash, Uraraka gaped back at the woman. Okay, that's not fair. What isn't fair? Bombshell laughed loudly at the brunette and tossed the magazine onto the table dismissively. You have a big honking crush on him, and don't you dare try to hide it from me, sister. Uraraka blushed madly at the call-out and looked away. Come on, Bombshell. I get 1 hour with you before I have to go for months without hearing from you again. Bombshell wagged a finger at her. And you know better than anyone that I live for gossip like this. You know I'm not going to say anything. So quit wasting time and tell me everything. Uraraka knew she wasn't getting out of this conversation, but a large part of her felt relieved. She'd been shutting her feelings for bakugou away within herself for a long time now, refusing to speak about it with anyone, including Nina. She'd been so hesitant to admit those feelings for a long time, and once she'd finally caved into them, she was forced to cram them further down within herself to keep her and Bakugou's secret relationship safe. Admittedly, she wanted nothing more than to pour out her feelings and frustrations to try and clear her own head. It was too much extra stress she was carrying around in silence. Don't make me use my quirk on you again, Bombshell pressed with the shadow of a grin. You know I will. All right. Uraraka couldn't stop the nervous smile on her face as she looked back at her old boss. She trusted Bombshell a lot, and the blonde woman had never given her a reason to doubt her. What do you want to know? Well, we have an hour. Bombshell gave her a wicked grin. So, whatever you can fit into an hour, but please, don't spare any of the juicy details. Oh, girl, I am just so excited right now, you have no idea. Bakugou groaned as his crusty eyes blinked open to a fluorescent light over his head. His head was pounding, and the sheets under him felt scratchy against his bare. His eyes snapped open all the way as he realized where he was, and he glanced down at himself before wincing. A hospital gown? Whoa there! A voice beside him startled him awake further, and he whirled his head around to see 4 eyes in a bed as well. What the fuck? Bakugou snapped and noticed that his tongue was papery and the roof of his mouth felt dry. Ito was also clad in a hospital gown, but he seemed much more comfortable in his bed than Bakugou felt. He had a game of solitaire laid out on his swivel table, and he stopped playing to give the blonde a humored look. Just relax, Bakugou. You're just in the hospital to recover from the battle at the police station. Bakugou moved to sit up more and grimaced as he tried to move his arms. Damn it, what the fuck is this? He carefully examined the thick bandages around his arms. They felt weak and tender at the movement, but his right arm felt far worse. Just take it easy for a bit and rest. Ida looked back down at his game. There's no need to rush. You got pretty banged up at the end there. Stop enjoying this, Specs. Bakugou spat and gave the other man a furious scowl. How long have I been out? Well, Ida carefully lifted a card and moved it, a slightly humored smile playing on his lips. They had to sedate you because you were going nuts, but I'd say it's been about a day. I can't say for sure, though. They sedated me a little while after you. Fuck this. Bakugou moved to sit up again and groaned painfully when he tried to heave himself up. Where is everyone? You mean Uraraka? Ida looked over the top of his glasses at the blonde. I don't know. She's probably out fighting like everyone else. Bakugou froze at the response and gave Ida an intense look. What? I'm sure she's all right. Ida turned his gaze downward again. She'll be around soon enough. What the fuck do you mean by fighting? Bakugou grit his teeth as he slowly moved to sit upright, and the machine next to him beeped as his heart rate rose. I thought we took Teller out. We did. Ida shrugged and nodded, but that seemed to piss off Viper a lot. He started handing out quirking drugs for free in exchange for mayhem across the country. Every agency you can think of has their hands full. Bakugou sat still for a moment as he processed this, but his mind couldn't seem to wrap itself around Ida's words. You're fucking with me, and that shit isn't funny. Trust me. Ida sat up straight and gave his full attention to the blonde man. I am not. Every villain in the city decided to pick a fight with heroes, and it's working. But Bakugou, his tone turned serious as the blonde made a move to get out of bed. You're in no position to help right now. Your arm took a lot of damage, and you need to let it heal. Fuck my arm. Bakugou hissed out painfully and used his free hand to rip the 4 out of his injured arm. The machine beside him lit up with lights and noises, but he didn't pay it any mind as he moved to get out of the bed. Just as his feet dangled off the side, the door was thrust open and 2 nurses ran in with panicked looks. Bakugou gave them a deadpan expression as they registered what he'd just done. The fuck are you looking at? Ground Zero. One of the nurses stuttered out in disbelief and hurried across the room. What is going on? I'm going to help my agency, the blonde sniffed, hoping to camouflage the pain in his joints as he tried to heave himself off the bed. He grit his teeth for a moment as his body protested. Where the fuck is my costume? Please. The nurse stopped in front of him and pressed her palms on his shoulders. You need to lie down and rest. Where is it? Bakugou moved to swipe her hands away, but his arms were too spent to do it. The other nurse carefully made her way to the other side of the bed and began to gently force him back down onto the sheets. I'm sorry. We had to cut it off of you. We will send it back to your agency to get it mended at the first opportunity. Until then, you need to rest. If you aggravate your injuries any further, you'll be looking at a few extra days of bed rest. This is bullshit. Bakugou cursed but relented, allowing the nurses to reinsert the 4. How long am I stuck here for? The second nurse gave him an apologetic glance as she adjusted the pillow behind his back. The doctor said you'd be in here for a few days at least. If you're lucky, he can fix your arm entirely, but that depends on whether or not you make it any worse. Got it. Bakugou rolled his eyes in annoyance. Yeah, whatever. Ida spoke up again as the nurses stood back. Could you give Ground Zero the message that Earthworm left him last night? Oh, right. The first nurse seemed to come to her senses. She hurried from the room and soon returned with a pink sticky note, handing it to the blonde. He left this for you. The fuck is this? Bakugou winced as he lifted his hand to grab the note. He read it and sniffed in recognition. You got a phone I can use? The nurses glanced at each other briefly before one pulled out her own cell phone. We're not usually supposed to do this, but... She shook her head and offered it to the blonde. Just don't tell the doctor, okay? Fuck. Bakugou snatched it from her hand. I'm not a fucking snitch. He glanced down at the sticky note a few times as he dialed the number. The phone rang for a while before a familiar voice answered. The fuck? Bakugou snapped into the phone. Where is Uraraka? Air. Mirio's voice sounded uncomfortable over the phone. Oh, hey, Bakugou. Uraraka isn't here right now. She left a little while ago. Left for where? The blonde couldn't stop the irritation from crawling up his throat as he realized that of all the places Uraraka chose to hide out, it was with Mirio of all people. Tokyo, Mirio replied quickly. I'm surprised she isn't already there with you. It's already been a few hours. Cho is here, though. Would you like to talk to her? Fuck no. The blonde bit back rudely. That little villain is the least of my fucking problems right now. I need to talk to Uraraka. There was a long silence, and Bakugou wanted to rub his temples but couldn't bring his injured arm to do the task. Shit. Just tell her to call me if you hear from her. Hang on. Mirio cut in before Bakugou could hang up the phone. I just checked, and the trains have been closed down since this morning. She's probably still here in Mizudafu, but I don't know where. I would think she'd come back here. Bakugou sniffed at the response before he grumbled a reply. Fuck, I think I know where she is. He hung up before Mirio could reply and searched up an agency on the phone. Uraraka had raved about her old boss to him enough times for him to remember it and make a solid assumption that she'd go there first. He quickly clicked the phone number, and it dialed. After a short conversation with a half-witted woman, his call was transferred. Hello. A sing-song voice picked up the phone on the third ring. Bakugou cleared his dry throat. Is she there? Oh, this must be Ground Zero. Bombshell's voice was grating against his ears. Yes, she's right here. Would you like me to put her on? Of course you should fucking put her on. Why else would I be calling you? Bakugou snapped at the woman, but she only laughed at him, making him growl in annoyance. One moment. There was a muffling in the background, and Bakugou waited with an irate frown on his face before a confused voice met his ears. Hello? Uraraka. Bakugou breathed, and his shoulders visibly relaxed. It's me. Bakugou. Her voice sounded surprised and worried. Are you alright? I was so worried when I saw the news dash. I'm fucking fine. Bakugou glanced down at his useless arms. Why the hell are you all the way out there? Uraraka was silent for a moment. I don't think it's a good idea to talk about this over the phone. Bakugou was miffed by her reply. Oh, sure. I was just real fucking surprised when I called you back, and Mirio answered. Bakugou. Uraraka sounded tired on the other end. I didn't know where else to go that was safe for Cho. Give me a break here. His frustration was suddenly quelled at her reply, and he felt a little guilty for his unintentional insult. Fine. When are you coming back? I'll be leaving here in a few minutes, actually. Uraraka swiftly responded, but he could hear the relief in her tone. Are you sure you're all right? What happened? Bakugou shifted a bit on the bed as the two nurses stared at him. He gave them a warning look, and they both turned their attention away, trying to look busy with helping Ida. My arm is fucked up, but I'm fine. I took him down like I said I would. I never doubted you. Uraraka breathed softly in response. I promise that I'll come see you as soon as I can, but she stopped mid-sentence, clearly distracted by something on the other end. I have to go.
I'm sorry.
Wait. Bakugou spoke up quickly, but it came out more like a croak. Everyone in the room turned to look at him, and he cleared his throat. Wait a damn minute. I'm not done talking. What is it? Uraraka asked after a moment. Are you okay? He hushed his tone, but it wasn't any use. Ida and the nurses could still hear him. He turned his head away from them and scowled in slight embarrassment. Uraraka giggled lightly over the phone. Yes, of course. I'm just fine, I promise. My ride to Tokyo just arrived, so you'll see me soon. Be careful. Bakugou still spoke with a low tone despite how pointless it was. I guess shit is pretty bad here in the city. You know I will. Uraraka reassured him, and he could practically see the small smile on her face. Just focus on getting better, okay? I'm glad you called. Yeah. He cleared his throat and let his tone return to normal volume. Just hurry the fuck up. I might be fucking useless to the agency right now, but you're not. Quit being lazy and get your ass back here to help. Uraraka's laugh made his heart skip. Oh, you're going to eat your words for that one. Ground zero. Once I get back, I'm going to single-handedly get the entire city under control again. You just watch. Yeah. Bakugou scoffed at her. I'll believe that shit when I see it, round face. I have to go. Uraraka's tone turned soft again. I'll see you soon. I'm really glad you're all right, Bakugou. I was worried. Tisich, he rolled his eyes. Don't sell me so short, round face. It takes more than a few paper cuts to take me down.
Damn.
Oh, I'm sure. Uraraka replied sarcastically. The big, bad Ground Zero really knows how to strut his stuff, doesn't he? I'm sure that the hospital stay is just a technicality. But really, I need to go. Yeah, whatever. Bakugou wanted to get in one last dig at her, but she was already humming goodbyes. Just hurry up. Will do, she murmured. All right, I'll see you when I can. See ya. He released a sigh of disappointment as the phone went dead, and he dropped it back in his lap. To him, the conversation felt like it ended too quick, but he was grateful he got a hold of her at all. He turned his attention around again to see that all three of the other people in the room were looking at him with wide eyes, and an irritated spike traveled up his spine, forcing a scowl on his face. The fuck are you extras looking at? So that's it for today. If you liked the video, leave a like, subscribe, and activate the notification bell. And if you want to contribute to the entire story being illustrated, just read the information in the description below.